Hi, I'm Gary Alt, and the topic for today is investing, making money with investments. What I'm not going to talk about is specific investments. Not going to say get into this stock or I was looking at these mutual funds or this kind of investment. Not going to talk about that at all. But what I am going to talk about is the most common mistakes to avoid and how to avoid them. Uh, when I say common mistakes, I mean common. I mean people do this all the time, and most people do these things all the time. It's really actually amazing to me to watch. And so on the other side of the coin is what things to do, what things to look for in ways to invest. Not again, not specific investments. The reason I'm not going to talk about specific investments is number one, I can't. And the reason for that is that I'm a licensed financial advisor. Now, that might seem like a contradiction to say, but first of all, I have to clarify that I am licensed as an advisor, but I am not currently active as an investment, as a financial advisor. I have licenses for it, I got all the education for it, but I'm not appointed with a brokerage, and I don't intend to be appointed with a brokerage because I'm retired at this point from that. I'm doing other things like life coaching mainly. Um, so I, but because I'm still licensed and I still do the continuing education, um, it's actually unethical and even illegal against regulations to talk about specific investments without going through a certain process, without doing them one on one, me and one person, or maybe me and a person and that person's spouse, maybe a third party if there's like an age issue involved, like senility or something, or that kind of situation. But it's basically one on one or one on two, let's say. Anything beyond that, it's not even possible and I mean literally, it's not possible to make a recommendation on a specific plan, any kind of specific investment, a specific dollar amount, specific time frame to a large number of people because it's inconceivable that that recommendation is going to work for everybody. It might work for out of 100 people, it might work beautifully for three or four or five of them. It might be a good idea for 10 or 15 with a couple of adjustments here and there and a little bit of tweaking. But for the vast majority, it's not going to work. That's just the way it is. It's because personal circumstances, age, intentions, the amount of money you have, the amount of liquid money you have. It's different with everybody. So it's never, ever, ever appropriate or even legal to discuss specific investments with a large number of people as a financial advisor, which should tell you something about one of the big mistakes that people make that we'll get to later on in this discussion. So, in order to or in order to invest money, we have to have money. That's kind of obvious, right? Well, the reason why I say it, even though it's obvious, is because sometimes people think, well, all I've got is $1,000, but I heard that if I put it in a certain thing, that I could turn that into $10,000 really quickly. Well, first of all, we have to be careful not to spend money that we can't afford to lose, money that we might need in a relatively quick kind of a way. In other words, liquid money, money that has to stay liquid. And liquid, I mean money that you can get at very quickly, like as soon as you can drive to the bank or whatever, or it's in a shoebox somewhere or whatever. That's liquid money. You don't have to sell anything. So that's what I mean by liquid. But it also means money that you can get at without losing money. So, for example, if we have a bank CD, well, and this is in the United States, by the way. I'm licensed in the United States, and I've lived in the United States for everything but a year of my life. So, if I talk about anything specific, it's going to be related. Even if I use dollar amounts, it's a U.S. dollar. But the principles apply to everybody. And everywhere you go, there are similar things that happen in the banks, and there are similar investment vehicles, and some of them are identical. You're just buying stock in a company you could buy anywhere. But anyway, so I mentioned CD, certificate of deposit. That's a bank instrument that has a certain term. Could be a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years, pretty typical. Um, the idea is that you get a higher interest rate. It's still not going to be really knocking anybody's socks off. It might be 2 or 3% or so. I don't know, whatever the interest rates are nowadays. But the idea is that you get a higher rate the more time you're willing to lock up your money. So if you have a 5-year CD and you need that money, like, in 6 months, you're going to have to pay a penalty to the bank for having taken that money out. So you didn't make money, you lost, or you lost some of the money. You made a little bit and then lost a bunch. That's not liquid money. So like a bank CD is not 100% liquid. Yes, you can go into the bank and get your money in 5 minutes or whatever it takes, but no, you can't get it out quickly in a way that you're not going to lose money. So liquidity is important. So anyway, that again gets back to the idea that in order to invest money, we have to have money, and it should be money that we yeah, it's necessary that we have that money, but we don't need it like now or tomorrow. And if something really horrible happened, it wouldn't kill us to lose it. The objective is to not lose it, obviously, but we have to keep that in mind. So how do you do that? Well, if you don't have money, and this is the situation, and the reason for this video really is that as post JWs, it's really typical for us to have spent a lot of our lives in failure mode. We were programmed for failure, financial failure. We were taught that having too much money, there's some kind of virtue in not having money. I don't know how, but it has a moral quality or something. That if we, spend too much time at work, we're neglecting kingdom interests, or our position is too high. It's like we're trying to show off and be too important. There were a whole bunch of reasons why we're really supposed to be financial failures when you come down to it. And so now here we are, we're out of it, and now we not afraid of money, but we're not really sure how to make it because we maybe never got the college degree, for whatever reason. So if we don't have it, we can't invest it. And there's nothing I can tell you that's going to say, well, I could take that $1,000 and let's turn it into $10,000 by the end of this year, and then the year after that we'll turn it into 50,000. There's no guarantee that that's even possible or is ever going to work. So you have to have money to invest money. So it basically means you have to either just have it already, or you have to get it like through as an inheritance, or you won the lottery, or you have to work for it. Of those three scenarios, the most likely one we're going to fall into is number three. We have to work for it, right? I mean, that's the only responsible way to do it. Is we have to work for it, unless, like I said, we get an inheritance or something, or we won the lottery. So, what are some of the mistakes that people make? One is not investing at all. And why is that a mistake? I mean, if I take $100,000 and put it under my mattress, I'll have the $100,000 10 years from now, right? What's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with it is if we understand the time value of money, which is a very, very critical thing. It's one of the most important things in any investment strategy is understanding the time value of money. What that basically means is that $100,000 today is not going to be worth $100,000 10 years from now, or any number of years from now. It's probably, and I can almost guarantee without guaranteeing that it's going to be worth less. Because if we're saving up for something that costs $100,000 today, and we get to that 10-year mark and say, okay, here's my $100,000. Guess what? That thing we wanted to buy for 100,000 is probably now going to cost 150, $160,000, and we just don't have it because our money is not worth. The value of money has to do with what it's going to buy, right? So the time value of money is a very, very critical thing, and there's just no two ways about it because inflation is something that we can't control. And and the reason why I say you can't guarantee anything is because inflation is probably the one thing that you can almost guarantee is going to happen. Because in my life, there's been maybe 1 year or something of deflation. I don't know. Maybe there's been a couple, but probably it's never happened that it was just at zero. Almost every year there's some type of inflation. It might be 3%, it might be 5, some years it's 8, could be 10. So there's no guarantee if it's going to be or what it's going to be, but it's as close as a guarantee that I can come to that it will happen, that money will be worth less in the future. And that has to do with things that are a bit complicated, but it has to do with supply and demand. The fact that as the population increases, the money supply increases. And the more money there is in circulation, the less it's less it's worth. It's a basic principle. So inflation is not actually even a horrible thing. It's actually a part of life that's almost necessary because as populations get less and more, obviously the value of money has to change. So it's not something to rail against, but it is something to recognize rationally and deal with. So putting money under a mattress or putting it into a bank account that's going to get like 0.5% interest is not a good long-term strategy. Because just to talk about the bank thing before we move on, if we get 0.5% interest on $100,000, let's say, okay, that means at the end of the year we'll have a little bit more than $100,000. Not a whole lot more, but a little bit more. But if over a period of even after a year, if inflation was 5.5% and we got 5.5%, we've actually lost 5% of that money. There's still $100,000 or plus whatever in our account, yes, but it's not worth that anymore. It's now worth less because it buys less. So we've really lost money against inflation if we're invested in something that has a yield that's less than inflation. So that's a very, very important thing to understand. So anyway, that would be a mistake, not investing at all. But the biggest mistakes that people make, I'm going to tell you several of them. One is allowing emotions to affect our investment strategy. Now, how do people do that? Well, first of all, there is an emotional component to money because if we want to buy a yacht, or let's just say a boat with our money, that's an emotional thing. Nobody needs a boat. I mean, maybe for some weird example, somebody might, but most of the time it's just because you love fishing, you want to relax, you want to spend your retirement on a boat on the ocean or whatever. It's an emotional thing. We don't need it. Um, so the use for the money might have an emotional component to it. But in terms of the investment, watching that investment grow and shrink and whatever, that we have to eliminate emotions from it because it'll lead to bad decisions if we get emotional about it. So, for example, if we've got an account of whatever kind and we're hoping to get 5 to 10% based on what we selected, but all of a sudden we lost money. Not only did it not make 5%, but it actually went down. It went down 5%. Oh my God. Oh my God. This is not supposed to happen. I just lost, like, let's say $5,000. Well, first of all, it's not what we call a realized loss or a realized gain. That's when you cash it in and it's done. Now it's in cash. The investment is gone. You don't own it anymore. So it's a realized gain or loss. If it's just on paper, it's just an account statement saying that this stock has lost 5%, which happens every day. Stocks go up and down, mutual funds go up and down every day. It's nothing unusual, nothing you can't anticipate. If it's just on paper, it doesn't matter because tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow you might lose a little more. Tomorrow you might gain everything back plus 10% more. So don't get emotional about it and say, oh my God, I have to cash this in. Because if you do, you're basically locking in whatever the gain and the loss was. You don't own that position anymore. So therefore, it could never work for you again unless you buy it again. But then at what price are you going to buy it? So we're kind of finalizing that segment of our investment, whether it was for a gain or for a loss. That's what emotions can do. When we look at our statement and freak out and say, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I got to get out of this. I got to do this and that. And especially if our time horizon, which we'll talk about in more detail later, but if our time horizon is long, like 20, 30 years, if we're in an investment that we don't need the money for like 30 years, who cares if you lost money this year? Unless the company that you bought stock in is going out of business, all right, then yeah, minimize your losses. Generally speaking, it's best to kind of just stay the course and not get emotional about it. Now it's a different story if we have like a year or something until we have to use that money. But I'm going to get into risk tolerance and time horizon a little bit later. That's how we decide what is an appropriate investment for us based on not just our risk tolerance, but our time horizon. The most critical aspect, in my opinion, of any investment is the time horizon. Some people will say no, risk tolerance is more, whatever. They're two things that kind of bounce off each other. I personally think that time horizon is the most important, and I'll explain that in a little bit. So how can we let emotions affect us? How can that happen? Well, first of all, it's looking at our state bank statement and freaking out, or our investment statement. Second of all, it's watching television. Just don't. Just don't listen. Just don't watch financial news. I'm not saying never. It's like not going to kill you to watch it, but they'll always talk about the Dow Industrial, which I don't know if they talk about that outside the United States because it is a U.S. concept. But it's the Wall Street Journal that publishes it, which is a New York paper. But uh, the Dow is basically an index of 30 blue chip stock companies. I think most of them, if not all of them, are U.S. companies. I actually don't keep track of it because of what I'm about to tell you, but I think it's mostly U.S. But you can buy it anywhere. I don't care if you live in Thailand or whatever. You can buy any of these stocks. Um, so what does it actually have to do with your investment? If you're not invested in the Dow, which it's not possible to be, by the way. I'll tell you why. But if you're not invested in the Dow, why is it important what the Dow index is? I, Today, the Dow index was around 38,000 when I looked at it, 38,400. So they're obviously different by now, but and it'll end differently. Does that mean that's the value of the stocks in the Dow? No, because there are 30 stocks in the Dow, and I don't know what the value of them all are. I mean, it changes every day, all day long. But let's just say that the I don't know. There are some that go for $40 or $50 a share, $30 a share, and then there are some like I don't know Google and Apple that go for 800 or 1,600 a share or whatever the heck it is today. On average, well, maybe I shouldn't talk in terms of an average, but in total, if you added up the value of all those stocks, it's not going to be close to $38,000. Not even close. It might be $3,000 or so. It might be a tenth of that. It's so the actual value of those stocks has nothing to do with the index because it's what they call a weighted index, which means that a given company participates in the Dow according to a percentage it's a very complex calculation that I couldn't even possibly explain to you. The other thing is that the fact that the Dow is not what it was. What is it, like 110 years old or so? I don't even know how long it's been around, but it wasn't originally 30 stocks. It was like around half of that, none of which now exist as companies. Well, there might be one or two that exist with a different name, but they'll sometimes companies will do this, and I think this is dishonest personally, where they'll say that if you invested $100 in the Dow in 1910 or whatever, you would now be a millionaire. Well, yeah, that's if every minute of every day for those hundred something years you watched the Dow and you sold the companies that were going out of business and bought the new ones in the Dow. You have to do that precisely as those things happen in order to. If the fact is, if you put $100 in the Dow 19, 110 years ago, you would have nothing now, nothing, because most of those companies went out of business. So putting all this stock in the Dow, all it is an index that is supposed to be predictive of the rest of the market. Sometimes it's close, so that if you're invested in a bunch of things that are not in the Dow, they might kind of go in the same direction as the Dow, or they might not. And I've seen it many, 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 many times where people are all freaking out about, oh my God, the Dow is down 500, it's down 30, it's down 500 points or whatever. Okay, but let's look at your investment. Your investment made 5% today. Did you know that? Oh, really? Yeah, yeah. So yeah. So who cares about the Dow? You've got the S&P index, you've got the Nasdaq. You get they're just indexes. It's not actual investments. It's just indexes. When you watch the television news, the financial news on television, they talk mainly about the Dow. They also talk about the Russell 2000 and S&P 500 and S&P 100 and all that stuff. It's true, but they focus on things that don't have a whole lot to do with reality. Why? Well, I have a personal theory about it, but the basic principle, one of the most basic principles about investing is to make money, you have to buy low, sell high, right? So if you buy something at $10 a share today and it's $15 a share tomorrow and you sell it, you made $5. If you bought it today at $15 and then it goes down to 12 tomorrow, you lost $3 if you sold it. So what are savvy investors doing while we're panicking over the news about the Dow because it just went down and we have to sell? The savvy investors are buying the stuff as it goes down because they realize that it's at a discount. And if everybody's selling it, I'm going to buy it because I'm going to make money in the future. So they're profiting from our foolishness essentially, because we just panicked and we just said we got to sell all this stuff, and so they're buying it at a discount. When it goes high, they're either holding on to it or they're selling it. That's what they do. So it's buy low, sell high. That's always going to be the mantra. So all of that affects supply and demand, which has another very big effect on the price of stocks because the basic laws of supply and demand are that as the supply increases and demand decreases, the price goes down. As the supply decreases and the demand increases, the price goes up. That's with anything, any commodity, anything. And so the same thing with stocks. If everybody's selling out of a panic because the Dow went down and they're watching the news, there's a huge supply of stocks available all of a sudden, which decreases their value even more. And all these savvy people, they kind of wait and they watch and they say, okay, this might not be necessarily the lowest price, but it's probably going to be no lower than this, or I think we've hit a point where we should buy this stuff. So they start buying it up like crazy, and because they're so wealthy, they can afford to buy tons of it. So guess what? The supply goes down, and now the demand, so the price is going up, and that demand is growing because all these people, these average people like us, want to buy it because the price is going up. Let me buy it. Let me buy it. And so it makes it so they're basically getting rich off of our foolishness, and it's because we're watching the television news. So just don't watch the television news when it comes to stocks. When it comes to the market, the other mistake that people make is they ignore the principle of buy low, sell high. Everybody would agree that that's a great idea, but they do the opposite. People, the average person that makes mistakes is one of the biggest mistakes they make because they look at a stock and they're like, oh well, yeah, but I watched this for a couple of days and it's really hardly increases, and I don't think that's a good stock. So let me. Oh, well, how about this one? This one went up. Like, oh my God, the last 5 days in a row it went up. I think I should buy it. Okay, but what you're doing is you're buying something at a high because you're impressed with it because it's like worth all this money. Do you buy anything like that? Would you go into a car dealership and say, "What's your most expensive car?" Oh, really? See, that's not no, no, I don't wanna buy a car that only costs $20,000. I wanna buy let me know when the price goes up. That's when I'm gonna buy this car. Nobody buys sandwiches that way, nobody buys shoes that way, nobody buys a house that way, but they buy stocks that way. People do it all the time. They buy it because it's increasing, and then they sell it because it's decreasing, and they panic. It blows my mind, but it happens every day. And like I said, it makes the rich people richer and the poor people poorer. Anyway, the another thing that is a very, very big mistake that people make, and it has to do with TV, um, is getting their information from people that are talking to well, getting their information from the wrong people. Okay, which there's a couple of categories of who the wrong people are. One is people that talk to a wide audience at the same time, and they're really entertainers. I'll just mention a couple of names, not to pick on them, but just so you know what I'm talking about. You've heard of Jim Cramer. You've heard of Susie Orman. Well, if you're in the United States, you've heard of them probably. You've heard of or Tony Robbins. These people. I mean, I'm not saying they don't know what they're talking about. They probably know a lot, but I can guarantee you that they're not financial advisors. If they were, they would have been fined out of business a long time ago because it's unethical and against regulations to talk about specific investments to a large audiences the way they do. And the reason for that is, like I said before, the advice is never, ever, ever going to be good for a large percentage of that audience. It just can't be. So why? So they're just not. It's just not good to go to that source. Anybody that talks to a large audience about, I mean, principles, okay, great. Like I'm talking to whoever, I don't know, maybe 100 people, maybe 10,000, I don't know, but I'm talking principles. Specific investments, I haven't said one thing. The only thing I've mentioned is like bank accounts that offer 0.5%. That's theoretical. But if it offers 0.5%, it's going to be 5.5%. There's no question about it. That's not really considered an investment. I'm never going to talk about specific investments you should do in an annuity. You should buy this stock to more than one or two people at a time because it's unethical. It can't possibly be good advice, and it's actually against regulations. So these people that get up there in front of these big audiences, you they are not registered licensed financial professionals. They're just not. I don't care how much maybe they were in the past, how much experience they have, how many books they've written, how many followers they have. They like I said, a lot of their advice might be good in principle, but some of it is really bad. I'll just give you one example because I used to do a lot of insurance, especially life insurance. Insurance is an important component to any financial plan because if you're not making an allowance for your death or for your disability, what happens to your investment? What happens to your ability, your kid's ability to go to college with the money you've been saving, or for your wife to retire, or for your family to stay in the same house if you die? So the part of any decent financial plan is not just the investment component, but also the life insurance component. So this particular person would say, buy term and invest the difference. Buy term and invest the difference. Why? Because you can get a big chunk of money and it doesn't cost a lot of money for the term, and life insurance just isn't a good investment. Well, that is very, very true in general for young people that have the circumstances that mean that they really need a lot of insurance. So let's, for example, somebody's 25 years old, just got married, has a kid, maybe another couple of kids on the way. They've got like 20 years of raising these kids where they're going to have all kinds of, these kids are going to be dependent upon them and their income for all of those 20 years. If they want to go to college, they're going to depend upon mom and dad for that, whether they get student loans or not. Um, and then even beyond that, you're responsible, like a married couple are responsible to each other for income and for housing expenses and things like that. So if you're 25 or something like that, or 35, yeah, you need a lot of insurance, a couple of million or whatever it is. And the most affordable way to do it is with term. Okay, great. So buy term, invest the difference. Okay. In other words, the difference between buying term and buying a policy that has a cash value, which could be literally cash or could be in mutual funds or what they call sub accounts. Um, it's really, really bad advice if someone doesn't realize by at like the age of 60, let's say, let's just theoretically, the person turns 60 and their life insurance is expiring because it's a 30-year policy. And you're never going to get, there might be 35-year policies nowadays. I don't know, but it's always been 30 years is the maximum you can get. All of a sudden, your policy is running out. And that basically means that you can keep it if you're willing to pay the increased premiums, which are going to be so high. I mean, literally like 10,000 a month. I mean, it's just crazy how high it'll get after a couple of years. So your insurance is going to go away, and you're not going to have any insurance for your spouse, for your funeral expenses, for your whatever it is you want your insurance to do. It's not going to be there unless you convert your policy to a cash value policy like a whole life or universal life or something like that. Or if you just outright buy a policy like that. So, okay, no problem. Let's do that. Okay. Okay, cool. Oh, $800 a month? Oh, no, I can't do that. How about if we do a policy for like half the value? Oh, $500 a month. Oh gosh. I mean, you really screwed yourself. If you're getting like 60 years old and all you've ever had was term, and now you're just thinking about it, congratulations, you really screwed your. I mean, and that's because, and then you get to an age where you can't get insurance, which nowadays it's gone up. It might be 70, 75 or something like that. but you can't get term insurance after a certain age because you're going to die, within, I don't know, statistically within a 10 or 20 years. So they're not going to give you as we get older, probably our health changes, certainly our weight changes, maybe even our height decreases a little bit, making our BMI different. So we're probably not going to get the same rate we got when we were 25 years old. We might not even be able to get any policy if we've had a stroke or, so I've seen it many times where people have gotten into their, 60s or 70s and they are completely without ability to get the insurance that they need, even though their life insurance needs might be less because they're not worried about replacing an income anymore. They can't get anything. So yeah, that whole idea of buy term and invest in it is so short-sighted, naive, and just plain stupid. It's beyond belief that people believe that's a good idea. Like I said, it's great for young people, but man, if you're not watching it, your life is going to be completely out of control at some point. And your finances are going to be a disaster, or you're just going to gonna leave somebody nothing to pay all the expenses and all how it's going to change their life. So anyway, the point is, I'm kind of beating a dead horse. The point is that people that are not licensed financial advisors and that are talking to a massive audience, even more than two or three people at a time, are not ethical. Period. I mean, it's just not ethical, and that's why it's a regulated thing. And so just limit your time listening to people like that. They might have an idea here or there, but generally speaking, you really need to talk to a financial advisor if you really need financial advice. So the other thing about audiences, about like who you're going to listen to, um, a lot of people listen to just well-meaning friends or people you work with, or the guy down the block, or your mom or dad, or whoever. There are a couple of problems with that, and they might be well-meaning, and their advice could, by some freak of nature, it's possible that their advice could be good. It just works that way. I'm not going to say it's never going to be good, but I'll give you two reasons why it's a really bad idea to rely on personal advice from a relative, a neighbor, a friend, a workmate, what have you. One is that there is no way in the world that your investment experience, even if you copy what they did exactly, there's no way in the world you will get the same results. It's impossible. I had it years ago when a good friend of mine showed me a piece of paper that had, I don't know, 10 or 12 investments that a good friend of his had gotten himself into, and all of it worked out beautifully, according to him. When did he buy those investments? Maybe two or three of them he got 10 years ago when they were at a certain price and they're not at that price anymore. And then another three or four he bought 3 years after that at a certain price and they're not at that price anymore. It's inconceivable that you're going to get those same investments at the same price and that they're going to perform the same way for the next X years like his did. It just is never, ever, ever going to happen. So he's basically showing him a piece of paper that you might as well throw in the fireplace. It means nothing. Um, and the thing is that these are like I said before, these are unrealized gains and losses. For him to actually say that I made money on these, he would have to cash them in today. And if he cashed them in today, the only way he's making money is because people are buying what he bought for a lot less money. And one of those people is you. You're buying it at the price he's selling it. You're never going to have it just blows my mind when people just say, "Oh, my friend had a great experience with buying this. I think I'm going to buy that." It's like, "Oh my God, that's like a good reason to not buy it." So just forget about it. Just don't ever, ever, ever listen to somebody say that I bought this, so should you. It's never going to be the same experience. It might be better, or it might be worse, but it's never going to be the same thing. The other thing is because people's perspective is really strange when it comes to investments. When it comes to anything, I guess it's people's personal perspective is never going to be the same as your perspective. Uh, what I mean by that is when somebody says that, yeah, my investment portfolio has really done well. Well, what does that mean to you? What does well mean to you? Sometimes it hasn't even done well, but they think it has because they're okay now. They got what they think they should get. I'll just give you an example because it's hard to explain otherwise. I'll give you an example, and I saw this happen a lot with a lot of people back in 2008, 2009, when the market really took a really went badly for quite a while, and it really, even though the Dow improved, the economy really didn't for quite a while. Um, so I have a friend, an old high school friend that's a school teacher. So she's in what in the United States, it's called a 403B, which is the equivalent of what's also in the United States called a 401k, which to everybody else, what that basically means that it's a company sponsored investment account, investment plan that is open to all employees to participate in. So the investments are all mutual funds or sub accounts, they'd say. Um, and it's all tax deferred, in one way or the other. So there's tax advantages to it. And what happened was, let's say, I don't remember exactly what hers was worth, but let's say it was worth $400,000. So hers is a 403B because she's a school teacher. She's actually a librarian, but at a school. And I think healthcare workers also would be in the 403B. Everybody's in a 401k. But anyway, that's the United States. The point is that it's a investment, retirement account. So let's say it was $400,000, and all of a sudden it was now worth, let's say 200,000. It was something like that, like 210 or 220. I don't know. So she lost pretty close to 50%, which was a really typical experience, depending upon what you were invested in for like most of the country at that point. So what does she do? She looks at it and she says, "Oh my God!" I mean, she hears the news that this is what's happening because Lehman Brothers and all this stuff, and so she's like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" So she cashes in. She switched it to cash, like that. Like that's all she did was switch it. But the fact is, she's selling everything that she owns at the current price, which is a loss. So her $400,000 is now worth 200,000, and she's selling it. She just lost $200,000 because she doesn't have 400 anymore. She has 200, so she lost $200,000. She puts it all in cash, and lo and behold, it stays $200,000. Maybe next year it's up to 200,000 and $400 or something. Whatever. And but then she looks at it like a week or two later, and the market is continuing to tumble, and the 200,000 is now would have been worth like, I don't know, let's say 160,000. So she's like, "Whew, am I glad I traded that in? I could have lost $40,000, but now I've got 200,000, and I am so glad I traded that in." Okay, so she guaranteed that she lost $200,000, but she just made sure she didn't lose another 40, and she's happy with the whole thing. It's sort of like when gas prices went up a couple of years ago, went up from like around $2 a gallon, and then went up to $4 a gallon, whatever it was. So they virtually doubled, and then they come down to like 250, and everybody's like, "Whew, isn't this great? Gas is 250." Yeah, but it's still 50 cents more than it was. It's like people just forget. They just really forget what they've actually lost. So so her perspective to this day, I once in a while talk to this old friend of mine, and I don't have the heart to tell her that, actually you lost a lot of money and you're never going to see that money again, ever, never. Unless you just happen to take it all out of cash and buy something that suddenly gains 100%. It would have to be 100% gain to get that $200,000 back. I don't have the heart to tell her, but she's still proud of herself because she thinks that she saved herself from losing that $40,000. So you understand what I'm saying? She lost 200,000, but she's proud of herself for not losing 240,000. So a person that comes to you and says, "My investments really have done well for me," what does that mean? So I just want to talk for just a minute about the two major factors that I touched on earlier, that affect every investment. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because if you go to a financial advisor, which we'll talk about, These are the two big factors that they should take into account, and the way they take it into account is important. It has a lot to do with how you're going to pick an advisor if that's what you want to do. The two big factors are risk tolerance and time horizon. Risk tolerance just has to do with what I'm willing to what level of risk am I willing to take? Am I an aggressive investor where I would like to have the opportunity to make a really maximize my returns, but I'm also willing to accept the possibility that I could lose a pretty significant amount of money? That's aggressive. Your chances of making a lot of money are greatest when you're aggressive. They're also greatest that you're going to lose money. So that's the risk. And then you have moderate, which is in the middle, and then you have conservative, which is basically, yeah, I'm not willing to watch this thing, go below zero. So I'm willing to accept the 5 or 6% gain. That's all I really want. So that would be conservative. And then you have, in the middle, you have moderate conservative and moderate aggressive. So five, three or five, depending on how you count them. Um, and an advisor will basically show you some charts and ask a bunch of questions to determine where you fall in that spectrum. Kind of a taste thing. It's like I like steak, but you like lobster. It's like there's no way I could say that your risk tolerance should be the same as mine for this reason or that. It's just sort of the way you feel about it. It is a feeling kind of thing. Honestly, it's not so much intellectual as it is feeling. The other thing that is definitely like a cast in stone kind of thing, and to me, the most important thing about any investment is your time horizon for a whole bunch of reasons. I'll just go into a couple of them. So let's say your time horizon is that you want to, and your objective is that you want to retire. The reason for this money is this is your retirement money. So I want to retire by the time I'm 65, 67 maybe, but around that time. And I want to have X amount of dollars. And I'm now 35 years old. So I've got 30 years for this investment to work. Well, that's going to have a great effect on what makes sense to do. So if we had said that I'm a conservative investor, but you've got a 30-year time horizon, it's like, yeah, but you really shouldn't be that conservative. So it's going to adjust a little bit, and the exact investments that are going to be recommended and that will pass suitability and compliance. There's a department in every brokerage, and even a lot of the companies that kind of said they work to the brokerages, called suitability and compliance. And if this application or if this investment does not pass muster, the financial advisor will find himself with a no. Like, sorry, you got to talk to your client again because we can't approve this investment strategy. So that's the way it works with these regulations. So if your time horizon is not consistent with the investment, then it's not a good thing. Then what happens as you get closer, like you're growing, it's like 25 years down the line, 28 years down the line, you're 2, 3 years away from the time that you were saving for. Well, then it's time to kind of pull back and get more conservative because you're going to need that money soon, and you don't want it in something that could lose a chunk of money when you need. Again, we get back to what we talked about with liquidity is not just access to the money, but it's access without losing money. So if you got like a year or two to go and you're still invested in like small cap, emerging markets in Southeast Asia or something very risky, that's not the place to be. It's just not, because you're older. Um, so time horizon has a lot to do with it, and for those reasons, uh, that's why you really can never say that this investment is great for me, so it should be great for you. So even as a financial advisor, if let's say I'm 60 years old and you're 30 years old, and you say, well, would you invest in this? As well, no, but I'm not you. I'm not 30 years old. I don't have 3 kids and a mortgage, and I'm not working. Like, so what does it have to do with what I? It has. So your investment has nothing to do with your advisor's investment or anybody else's. It has everything to do with your risk tolerance and your time horizon, what the money's for, when you need to use it, a whole bunch of things. So when you so I talked about all these people you shouldn't pay too much attention to, TV, financial news, entertainers, and life coaches that talk to masses of people or write books about this stuff. and they might have some good ideas, but there's no way their ideas apply to everybody, and could actually hurt a lot of people. And don't worry about the advice of friends, coworkers, all those. So who do you talk to? Who you just left for yourself? Well, I want to talk a little bit about how financial advisors make money, because a lot of people are afraid to go to a financial advisor because they're thinking, no, why am I going to have somebody help me invest money when some of that investment money is going to go into their pocket? It doesn't make any sense. I understand that. But let me explain a little bit how they make money. Is basically is two categories. One is fee based and the other is product based. Fee based could be that they're making money off giving you advice, which is not typical. Like I've known guys that are like insurance advisors, and they look at somebody's overall plan and they make recommendations, and they don't implement the recommendations. They say, yeah, go to this guy down the street. He's really great at this, and so they just get, like, I don't know, $500 or $1,000 from you for making the recommendations after having examined your whole portfolio. That's a little less common. The other fee based is where you sign an agreement that's well, you sign an agreement with the company who this advisor represents, to enter into a fiduciary arrangement where they're going to get, like, let's say 1% of your account value every year. That's pretty typical. So let's say you have $1 million account. That means they're going to get like $10,000 at the end of the year. Well, that sounds like a lot of money. But if they really did their job and they got you, let's say 100, they got you a 20 $250,000 return, because that's a quarter of a million. I mean, that would be a high return. But let's say they really hit a home run, and you ended up with $1 million and $250,000 in your account. You made $250,000. Would it kill you to pay 10,000 of that to a financial advisor that made that happen, as opposed to doing it yourself and maybe not getting half of that money? So most people with money realize that it's a really, really fair exchange to give 1% of the value of the investment, because then it's incumbent upon the financial advisor, not just because he has a fiduciary responsibility towards you, but also for his own benefit. If your account goes down, he's not making money. He's making some money, but he's making a lot less money. So it only makes sense for him to be competent, or her to be uh, to be competent and to make money for you. So that's the two ways that fee based arrangements can work. And the most common one is when it's a percentage of the account value. Well, that's not the most common arrangement with a financial advisor, because it really doesn't work that well with, like, really low value accounts, like I don't know, let's say a five or $50,000 account. You don't usually see financial advisors, getting into arrangements like that with people. They're more likely just going to be doing product based, which basically means that, well, there's two ways that works. One is that every time you place a trade, like you buy a stock or you sell a stock or you buy mutual funds or sell mutual funds, there's some sort of a sales fee. Not necessarily every time, but typically there's a sales charge, which mostly goes to the company, either the mutual fund company that owns the funds, or is issuing the funds, or to the company that placed the trade, the company that your advisor works for, that placed the trade in the stock market. Um, your advisor will get a percentage of that, but it's not going to be a lot. It's not like he's going to get like 1% of your investment or something like that. It's or 1% of the trade. But that's one way they make money. Where they make more money is products like life insurance or annuities, where they make it's a good chunk of money. I'll just put it that way. I mean, it could be a couple hundred, or it could be several $1,000s just for one policy. It just depends upon the size of it. The thing with that is that it never comes out of your hide, ever. You'll never write a check or see the value of your account be different because money went to your advisor, because those are insurance products. Life insurance and annuities are insurance products. And the idea behind insurance is what they call the law of large numbers. The insurance company always makes money because there's a large enough pool of people putting money into this into a fund, let's say. It's not literally that's not what they're doing, but this pool of money is created by all the people that are buying this kind of life insurance, or all these people that have made deposits into these annuities. And if if a few people in that group die, or something happens to those annuitants, or something like that, the insurance company can well afford it because it's not happening to everybody at the same time. So there's always enough money to give to the people that have these accounts, as well as for the insurance company to make money, and for some of the money to go to the investment advisor or the insurance salesman, without it costing you a penny. So the point is that investment advisors don't actually cost you that much money. If it's not fee based, they don't cost you anything. If it is fee based, it's only going to cost you like a percentage of the account value. Which, if it's $1 million, whatever, you just made 100,000, or whatever it is, which is not unusual to make 50 or $100,000 on $1 million in a year, and you give it 1% of that to somebody. Who cares? So anyway, that's why I'm just saying that, because don't be afraid of the idea of a financial advisor. Like I said, most people, especially at the lower dollar amounts, don't actually get into an advisory relationship where there's a fee kind of a thing going on. It's more likely like any investments are going to be in mutual funds, which is fine. It's a way of diversifying, and there's a better chance that they'll always make money, because they're not buying stock in just a particular company that could go out of business. So it's a good, fairly safe way to invest. But just, you can't really expect a mutual fund to make 25, 30, 40, 50%. It could, but it might not. But anyway, when you're looking for a financial advisor, it's really difficult to say where to look and what to look for. But I will just say that, in my experience, and I've known lots and lots of advisors in different companies all over the place, it's the vast majority are they follow the regulations, whether they're personally ethical or not. It seems like they are, but even for practical reasons, they're ethical, because it doesn't make sense not to be. Actually, it's like, how do you cheat people and make money in this business and not get caught for it? I don't even know how. Once in a while, you hear about Bernie Madoff, so I get it, but they're really like the rogues. Those guys are not typical. Of those, like, let's say 90.9%, 99.9% that are ethical, or that act ethically, maybe, I don't know, a larger percent, I don't know, whatever that might be, 10 or 20 or whatever percent, are not unethical. They're just not particularly competent. They don't really watch your investments that well, and they don't pay attention, and they make, like I said, to get something past suitability and compliance, it has to be in good order. So they're not going to be able to just put any kind of stupid thing in. But sometimes it's just not really the best thing that they could have thought of, or they're limited because they work with a company that has a limited offering. That's possible. Um, that's why, like, it's good to go with a bigger company usually. But I really think the vast majority, you're pretty much safe with anybody that is a licensed financial advisor. I probably shouldn't say with anybody, but you know what I mean. It's a pretty safe thing. The things that I would look for, this to me is the biggest thing, is notice how quickly a given advisor comes to a recommendation. You walk into somebody's office, and inside of 20, 30 minutes, he's saying, well, this annuity would work perfectly for you. Why don't we get it? Now, hold on a minute. Did he take the time to find out how many kids you have, how old your kids are? Did he expect them to go to college? What college? Did you have any colleges in mind for them? How old are you? When do you expect to retire? How much property do you own? How much liquid assets, or how much, rainy day money do you have? How much you have in liquid assets? I'm just scratching the surface. There are tons and tons of things that an advisor has to know about you personally, that have nothing to do with the guy that came before you, or the guy that's coming after you, or the guy that lives down the block from you. It's just you. If he doesn't know you like he's known you his whole life inside of whatever it takes, an hour or 2 hours or several meetings that take a couple of 2, 3 hours each. If he doesn't know everything about you that have anything to do with an investment, and all of a sudden he starts recommending things, walk out. Just walk out and wait until you find somebody that does. And if he, and I keep saying he, but could be she, obviously. I think majority of financial advisors are probably men, but there's no particular reason for that. It's just been my experience. But and then some of the ones that I think are the best are women. I think it's because they tend to be more interested in people, and that's what you really need in financial advisors. Somebody's interested in you as a person and in your circumstances, what your goals are, what your dreams are. Why is that house in Maine so important to you? What do you want to do with that? Do you want to sell it, or that's where you want your grandkids to come for vacations? Okay, I get it. It's an emotional component, but it's who you are. Anyway, I'm getting off the track a little bit. I talked about gauging risk tolerance and time horizon. It doesn't take that long to actually go through the practice. At some point during the conversation, they'll have to take out what they call an Ibbotson chart or some equivalent of it, which basically has graphs and questions about, giving this investment, if this and this happened to it, would you be more likely to buy more, sell it all, keep keep it the same, and all kinds of questions like that. That is going to eventually produce a risk. It's going to be every question is going to be weighted and given a number, and then he adds the numbers up at the end. And if it falls between a certain range of numbers, that you're going to be conservative. If another range of numbers, it's going to be aggressive. What have you. So that's going to be done. And like I said, it's like you like lobster and I like steak. It doesn't have anything to do with anything but your taste, because it's your answers. You don't. There doesn't have to be logic to it. It's just that, yeah. If I saw my investment tank, I'd pull out. That's what I would do. Okay, all right. I can't tell you you're right or wrong. That's okay. It's cool. The second thing is your time horizon, and that's really critical for all the reasons I already mentioned. So he's going to kind of add that all together and come up with what is really appropriate for you. I know all these things you want to accomplish, but how can we get there with your risk tolerance? And then is when he can make a recommendation. If he hasn't gotten to that, and I'm not saying that he has to fill out the chart, because or he or she has to fill out the chart, but at least the conversation should reveal that he kind of knows that stuff in his head. That, yeah, well, he knows that my time horizon is 30 years, and that I'm kind of averse to risk. Uh, if that hasn't happened, either on paper or at least in your advisor's mind, and they're recommending things, walk out. Do not talk to them for another minute. Another thing to be very wary of absolutely wary of, is anyone that indicates in some way that you can make X amount of percentage or X amount of dollars with this investment. I mean, unless we're talking about a savings account that has a fixed interest rate, there is nothing that you can say, yes, this is the expectation. This is going to go up 5% this year. It is one of the most strict rules that no financial advisor with half a brain will ever make that mistake. Because one of the mantras, and actually this is in almost every piece of literature you'll ever read from a mutual fund company or any kind of an annuity company, is something like, let's see, I haven't read this in a really long time. It's something like past performance is no guarantee of future results. Something like that. Or it might be, past results are no guarantee of future performance, but I think I got it right the first time. If you don't tell people, it's actually against the law to do business with somebody without specifically saying that to them verbally. A financial advisor may not do that. So when an advisor does the opposite and says, "Yeah, well, this one got 5% last year, so how would you like to make 5%?" You're basically he's basically indicating that you're going to make that much money. He's not guaranteeing it, but he might as well be, because you're thinking in your head, "Yeah, this is a 5%. Okay, great." Anybody that says anything that sounds like there might be saying that this is what you will get is completely out of line, totally out of line. Run away from somebody like that. Don't even bother talking to them anymore. Don't even question them about it. Just realize that they are not competent and not probably not even honest. That's the only thing I could tell you about picking an advisor. Has nothing to do with what kind of car he drives or would he make the same investment choices as you, because he shouldn't ever make the same investment choices as you, because there's nothing about his life that's going to be identical to yours except maybe his age, but virtually everything else is going to be different. So that's my only advice. And by definition, if you're choosing an advisor based on those qualifications, it can't be one of these life coaches that are talking to 10,000 people and writing books, or or somebody that's on TV. It can't be, because they're not licensed, first of all, and they're not doing any of the things that we just said were important for an advisor to do, to find out exactly what your personal circumstances are, not to guess, not to say, well, if you're 25, this is what you should do. No, you are you. You have your own fingerprint. You're like a snowflake or a fingerprint. No two are alike. And anybody that doesn't recognize that is just not worth a nickel. That's all I can tell you. So just to summarize, we talked about, you have to make money or to have money to invest money. Um, don't get emotional about your portfolio. Always buy low, sell high. Don't pay too much attention to TV, which includes the entertainers. And then in terms of our friends and family and people that are really well-meaning, just kind of take that with a grain of salt. Go to an advisor that really proves to yourself that they know you and that they care about you, and are going to do something that's tailored for you personally. Hope that helps. By the way, you can write to me. I mean, it's Gary at Open Path Life Coaching, or I'm sorry, Gary at Open Path Life Coach. But like I said, I'm licensed, but I'm not really in the business anymore. So I don't mind answering a question here and there, but I'm not going to be able to sit down with you for an hour and examine things and, answer a lot of questions. But there are some questions that I think even came up in this discussion that I wish I could probably go back and revisit. But anyway, I'm always reachable by my website and that email. But like I said, not really going to give you a whole lot of specific advice beyond what we've already talked about. So hopefully that's good enough for you. I hope. And so have a great day, and onward and upward. I hope you have all the money you need to reach all your goals, to get your kids educated, to retire comfortably, and doing all that great stuff. Have a great one.